I've been living in this neighborhood for a few years now. It's a little area, filled with charming older homes and friendly faces. On this particular day, I had a busy morning planned. I needed to pick up some art supplies for a new project, grab groceries, and swing by the post office to mail a package to a client. I got an early start, hoping to beat the usual midday rush. As I was heading home, I decided to take my usual shortcut past the elementary school. Now, I know during drop-off and pickup times, that street becomes absolute chaos. But in the middle of the day, it's usually smooth sailing. Boy, was I in for a surprise. As I turned onto the narrow one-way street, I noticed a car ahead of me slowing down. No big deal, I thought. Probably just someone picking up a kid who was feeling sick or dropping off a forgotten lunch. But then, the unthinkable happened. The car came to a complete stop right in the middle of the lane. I watched as the driver turned off the engine, flipped on the hazard lights, and casually stepped out of the car. Was this person seriously about to leave their car parked in the middle of a one-way street? I honked my horn trying to get their attention. I yelled out that she couldn't park there, but my words fell on deaf ears. The woman, and I kid you not, she had the classic Karen haircut, didn't even flinch. She just waltzed right into the school as if she owned the place. I sat there dumbfounded. What was I supposed to do now? I couldn't go around her. There was no space. I couldn't back up. Cars were already lining up behind me. Minutes ticked by. 5, 10, 15. The line of cars behind me grew longer and longer. Horns started honking. People were shouting out their windows. I exclaimed about how ridiculous the situation was, pointing out that there were parking spots just up the road. The driver behind me asked what was going on and why we weren't moving. I explained that some lady had just parked her car in the middle of the street and gone into the school. We all sat there stewing in our frustration. I considered laying on my horn until she came back, but I didn't want to disturb the kids in school. Plus, something told me this woman wouldn't care anyway. Finally, she emerged from the school. She strolled back to her car looking as carefree as ever. The cacophony of horns and angry shouts that greeted her seemed to bounce right off her. The woman offered a half-hearted apology, saying she just had to drop something off for her child. Her fake apology only fueled our anger. As she got into her car and drove off, I noticed a police cruiser turning onto our street. Apparently, one of the drivers behind me had called the cops. The officer pulled up beside my car and asked what was going on. I explained that we had just missed the woman who had parked her car in the middle of the street for 15 minutes, blocking all of us. The officer looked concerned and asked us to pull over so he could take our statements. As we were talking, wouldn't you know it, the woman came driving back around the block. The officer flagged her down and asked her to pull over. That's when things got really interesting. The woman immediately became defensive, claiming she hadn't done anything wrong and accusing us of harassing her. The officer tried to calm her down, saying he just needed to ask a few questions. But she wouldn't listen. Instead, she made wild accusations, claiming we had threatened her and her kids, and even said we had threatened to shoot up the school. Her wild accusations left us all stunned. The school security guard, who had come out to see what the commotion was about, looked completely baffled. He contradicted the woman's claims, stating he had been at the entrance all day and nothing like that had happened. The woman didn't like that one bit. In a fit of rage, she actually took a swing at the officer. Big mistake. Within seconds, she was in handcuffs, screaming about how we were all conspiring against her. The officer read her rights as he put her in the back of his cruiser. The officer informed us that she was being charged with assault on a police officer and filing a false report. He added that they would also be citing her for illegal parking and obstruction of traffic. It wasn't the way I expected my morning to go, but oh well. One thing's for sure, I'll be avoiding that shortcut for a while, entitled Parents or Not. My family and I live in a mostly white suburban town in New Jersey. We're Asian, and while most people are okay, there's definitely some underlying racism. My mom's a first-generation immigrant with a pretty thick accent, which sometimes causes issues. One day, my mom went to visit her friend across town. As she was leaving, she pulled out of her parking spot on this wide road. There was plenty of space, and a Jeep was coming down the hill, but it was far enough away that my mom had time to get out. Suddenly, this woman in the Jeep, let's call her Karen, swerves around my mom, crossing a double yellow line. Her rear wheel caught my mom's front bumper, ripping it clean off. Karen jumps out of her car screaming at my mom. She accused my mom of not knowing how to drive. My mom tried to explain that Karen had cut her off despite there being plenty of room. Karen yelled at my mom to call the police. When my mom said her phone was dead, Karen turned to a neighbor who had come out and demanded they call the police immediately. The police arrive, but things get weird. The officer barely talks to my mom before going to chat with Karen's boyfriend, who showed up and turns out to be an off-duty cop. They talk for a while, then send everyone home. When we got the police report, it was all wrong. It said my mom pulled out without signaling and hit Karen's car. Karen wanted our insurance to pay for her damage. We were stunned. My mom went to our neighbor, a retired police captain, for advice. He told her to go to the station and ask to file an internal complaint. So she did. At the station, my mom asked to see the chief. The officer told her she couldn't just walk in and see the chief. My mom then asked where she could file an internal complaint. The officer suddenly became alert and offered to show her the way. My mom showed all the evidence to the deputy chief, photos from witnesses, everything. She even mentioned possible racism since the officer ignored her accent. They started an investigation. Our insurance saw the evidence and refused to pay Karen. They went after her insurance instead. A month later, we thought it was over. An officer came by to say the cop who wrote the report was punished. We were ready to move on. Then, surprise, we get a court summons in the mail. Karen had filed 3 tickets against my mom just one day before the deadline. We couldn't even counterfall. My mom realized Karen was trying to pressure her into paying up and going away. When I asked what we were going to do, my mom said we were going to fight. My mom's not one to back down. She hired a lawyer and moved the case to a bigger court in another town. Smart move. It leveled the playing field and made it a hassle for Karen. On the court date, we show up ready for battle. But guess what? Karen's a no-show. Case dismissed. Word got around town fast. Karen and her cop boyfriend went from town favorites to social outcasts. He stopped getting invited to school events and she got kicked out of the PTA. My mom smiled, reflecting on how justice sometimes comes in unexpected ways. I expressed my relief that it was all over. My mom agreed but reminded me of the importance of always standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. It wasn't easy, but seeing Karen and her boyfriend get what's coming to them made it all worthwhile. Our little town might never be perfect, but at least now people think twice before trying to take advantage of others. I was a college student trying to make ends meet. My parents couldn't afford to pay for my education, so I had to juggle work and studies. The gas station job wasn't fancy, but it paid the bills. This one day started like any other. I was manning the register, restocking shelves, and helping customers with their lottery tickets. The Powerball jackpot was higher than usual, drawing in more hopeful players than we typically saw. As the afternoon wore on, a woman walked in with a thick wad of cash and a pre-filled lottery ticket. She didn't even bother to greet me, just dropped the ticket on the counter like I was some kind of machine. The woman demanded that I put her ticket through the machine 20 times. I looked down at the ticket. It had 5 sets of numbers, all with the power play option. One drawing of this would cost 15, so if she wanted it for the next 20 drawings, it would be 300. But that's not what she said. She wanted the same ticket 20 times for the next drawing. Same price, but definitely not what people usually want. I asked her if she meant she wanted this to run for the next 20 drawings. She insisted that she wanted me to put it through the machine 20 times, so she'd have 20 individual tickets. I tried to clarify if she wanted them all to draw at the same time, and she confirmed that was what she said. I explained that I just wanted to be sure that's what she wanted, and that these would all be duplicate tickets, all drawing on Friday. She just told me to keep putting it through. I ran it a few more times and asked again if she was sure this was what she wanted, explaining that they would all draw on Friday only. The woman sighed and confirmed yes. I kept going, and after the 12th or 13th one, she suddenly asked if she should keep these for all the drawings after Friday. I stopped feeding the ticket into the machine. I explained that these would all draw on Friday only and be done, just as she requested. I asked again if she meant she wanted them to run on every drawing afterwards. She said yes. I told her that's why I was asking so many times, and that these tickets would not do that. They would draw once and be done. That's when things started to go downhill. The woman began insisting that wasn't what she meant, and that she didn't want the ones I'd already printed. She asked who would want that. I explained that this was exactly why I had asked her so many times. I apologized but told her she needed to buy these as there was no way we'd be able to sell them. She refused, saying she wanted the ones she asked for. She was getting upset, and that's when my assistant manager stepped in. The assistant manager explained that he had heard me ask her several times before I started, and that I had even explained the difference to her. He said we couldn't sell the tickets I printed out, which I had only done after she repeatedly said that's how she wanted them done. The woman looked like she was about to bolt, so my assistant manager warned her that if she didn't buy the tickets, we'd have to treat it as theft and call the police. Finally, she gave in and bought the tickets. She used the rest of her money to buy the tickets how she originally intended, just not for as many draws. Later that week, I was curious and checked the winning numbers. To my surprise, one of her duplicate tickets had matched 4 numbers. It wasn't the jackpot, but it was enough to cover what she'd spent on all those tickets and then some. The next time she came in, her attitude had completely changed. She sheepishly approached the counter and apologized for her behavior. She even thanked me for being patient and trying to clarify her request multiple times. It turns out the unexpected win had made her realize how close she'd come to missing out due to her own stubbornness. We never expected to be sued by our own child. That's the core of our heartbreak, and it's incomprehensible. We're both in our 60s now, and our lives have been dedicated to raising and nurturing our son. It's all because of our son's misguided belief that our decision to bring him into this world was somehow selfish or wrong. We always told him he had potential. We would often encourage him by saying he could be anything he wanted, hoping to inspire him. We did our best to prepare him for life's challenges, but we couldn't shield him from every hardship. We watched him struggle through school, offering support and tutoring. When he changed majors in college, we stood by him, even when he ultimately decided to drop out. Since then, we've watched him move from job to job, always hoping he'd find his place in the world. His personal life has been difficult to witness. Each failed relationship left us aching to comfort him, but he pushed us away. We've seen him withdraw from friendships, and it pains us to think he might feel like a failure. We've always seen his worth, even when he couldn't see it himself. One day, we received a shocking phone call. Our son had lost another job, but instead of asking for help or support, he informed us he was suing us. It sounded insane, but he insisted we listen. He explained his reasons for the lawsuit, claiming we had brought him into this world unprepared and ill-equipped to handle its challenges. He accused us of being responsible for the mess he believed we had created. We were devastated. We couldn't understand how our own child, whom we loved unconditionally, could turn against us like this. We hired a lawyer to defend ourselves, though it felt wrong to need protection from our own son. The day he confronted us was heartbreaking. When I questioned his actions and reminded him of all we had given him, he coldly responded that we had given him everything except a choice. My husband protested, listing all we had done, raising him, feeding him, clothing him, loving him unconditionally. Our son dismissed it all, stating that he was paying the price for our decision. The case went to trial, becoming a media circus. We were painted as villains by some, while others defended the sacred bond between parent and child. In the courtroom, we listened as our son's lawyer argued that he never consented to existence, that we had thrust him into a world of suffering. Our lawyer countered, calling the case preposterous and warning about the dangerous precedent it could set. As parents, we testified about our love for our son, the sacrifices we made, and our constant efforts to provide him with opportunities and support. The trial dragged on, with experts debating the ethics of procreation and the nature of existence itself. We watched our son barely recognizing the angry, bitter man he had become. Where had we gone wrong? On the final day of the trial, our son made a statement to the court. He spoke of justice and compensation for his suffering. As he spoke, we saw not the man before us, but the baby we had held, the child we had nurtured, the teenager we had guided. Our hearts broke anew. The courtroom fell silent as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict. We held each other's hands, praying for understanding. The judge's voice rang out clear and firm. He not only dismissed the case, but delivered a scathing rebuke to our son. The judge explained that the gift of life is not a transaction or a contract, but an act of love, hope, and faith in the future. He stated that as parents, we owed our son nothing but love, shelter, and guidance, all of which we had provided abundantly. The judge continued addressing our son directly. He criticized our son for squandering the precious gift he was given and for blaming us instead of taking responsibility for his own choices and actions. The judge declared the lawsuit not only without merit, but morally reprehensible. He then turned to us, his voice softening. The judge apologized to us for the pain and anguish this frivolous lawsuit had caused, commending our love and dedication to our child even in the face of this betrayal. As we left the courthouse, surrounded by supporters and well-wishers, we felt a mix of relief and sorrow. We had won the case, but at what cost? Our relationship with our son seemed irreparably damaged. In the days that followed, we received countless messages from other parents sharing their own struggles and offering support. Our case had sparked a global conversation about the beauty and challenges of parenthood and the importance of gratitude and personal responsibility. As we sat in our home looking at old family photos and remembering happier times, we realized that our love for our son remained unchanged, despite everything. We hoped that one day he would understand the depth of our love and the joy his existence had brought to our lives. And maybe, just maybe, this experience would lead him to find the purpose and appreciation for life that he had been missing.